from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you. It's Friday, everybody. That means we're about to kick off the weekend tonight, but sit back, relax, pull up a chair. We're going to have an amazing next 3 hours together, keeping you company straight till 1 a.m. Of course, our phone number, if you want to join the conversation, we always let our hair down on Fridays, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you, whether you agree or disagree. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. And I want to go into this story right here. Where did it go? Well, not the Joe Biden and his family affairs. That can wait till later. But it was Joe Biden in Maine today. He was saying that maybe the GOP will impeach me over bringing down inflation, trying to be funny. But I found it interesting that he would discuss possibly being impeached by the GOP, because that's not something any president jokes about, right? This is now part of the White House record. It'll be part of a transcript. And to me, this says, I think Joe Biden's a little nervous. Listen to this.
We're growing faster. We're economically more advanced than every other major country in the world. It's down from 9% to 3%, and it's going to continue to go down. While there's more work ahead, earlier this week, the Washington Post suggested Republicans may have to find something else to criticize me for. Now that inflation is coming down, maybe they'll decide to impeach me because it's coming down. I don't know. I love that one. Oh, anyway, it's another story.
So Joe Biden is putting the political writing on the wall right now. And now listen, he's right. When I say that Joe Barbosa Biden relies on muscle memory of his days as a crooked politician in Washington, I'm not kidding. And you just saw it right there. This is the same Joe Biden that mopped the floor with Paul Ryan in the vice presidential debate some years back. This was a very, very good move by Joe Biden. He's right. Inflation has gone down from 9% to 3%. Now, listen, of course, they're playing with the numbers. They're not including so many things that would push inflation even higher. The truth is inflation's higher than they say it is. But it has gone down every single month for X amount of months. This is going to be a tough thing to sell on Election Day. Now, it won't be so tough when he says everything's going down, going down, going down. If I'm arguing against him, I'm going to say, you could say what you want, Joe Biden. Everybody listening, check your bank account. Everybody listening, put your hand in your pocket. Are you spending more today than you were spending 2 years ago, 3 years ago? At the beginning of his administration? Oh, yeah. Everybody is. So while he can say it's coming down, until you can feel it coming down in your pocket, you're not really going to believe it. But there are some people that will. People that were not really that hurt by inflation to begin with. You know, people that put off their Hawaii trip for maybe a trip to Florida instead. People that put off their trip to Italy for perhaps a trip to, I don't know, California. You know, something more local, something more affordable. Potentially. California might just cost as much to go to, honestly. But my point is, Biden can position himself in a position, and I'm being very frank here, where he can still be looked upon favorably by his base. And then all he's got to do is try to sell the status quo to the people in the middle. Not saying it's going to work, but I'm saying he's trying to do it, and he's skilled at doing it. He hides. He doesn't answer many questions. He hides from the media, so he's hiding from scrutiny. And then every now and again, he'll come out, he'll flash the pearly whites. He'll squint his eyes, put on those aviators, And, it's like, come on, man, I got hairy legs. Say something silly. People be like, oh, it's good old Grandpa Joe again. And he'll just get away with murder like he always does. And I say that figuratively. But the fact that he says maybe they'll impeach me lets me know that I think he's feeling a little bit of the heat from Hunter not getting the plea deal that he thought he was getting. The sweetheart deal that people said that he'd gotten. And then all of a sudden it fell apart, where they're saying, oh, yeah, well, we might be investigating the FARA registration violations. And him saying, oh, man, I thought we were done with that. Or I thought we were done with this. So the fact that there's FBI is saying that there's still an investigation going on, even if it's to keep Congress away, because if there's an ongoing investigation, you can't look at their documents. Got it. But people are going to expect more. I mean, of course, they could come out and say, yeah, after a second look and closer consideration and more scrutiny, that's it. That was all he did. And that's it. Yada, yada, yada. He's done. But the door's open. And I think the fact that the door's open and that the GOP is consistently getting on top of Biden, and rightfully so, and that now you've got Speaker McCarthy entertaining the idea of impeachment, which I think should definitely happen. And it should happen not once, but twice before Election Day. Absolutely should happen twice. Because I believe in settling the score, and I believe what he's done with this bribe thing is impeachable, and what he's done at the border is impeachable. Those two things alone should allow it. I mean, if I were in charge, I would probably even nail his lack of leadership and inability to figure out what happened with this mysterious bag of cocaine. I put that on there too and make it a third. Who cares, right? We've got to give it to them as strong as they were giving it to us, and not for retaliation purposes and for being a baby. Oh, they pushed me, I pushed them back, but no, for fighting back, because at the end of the day, Congress was elected by people, right? People like you, people like me, people we know, people we love, people we trust, our neighbors, our family. We, the people. And if we are electing Congress and they're allowing us, we the people, to be buffeted by Congress, by the White House, by their lies, then we need to put pressure on Congress, or at least those few in Congress that are actually taking their jobs seriously to represent us. At least that's just my take on it. Anyway, we've got a lot to discuss tonight, and like always, we have some amazing guests that are going to be joining us. We're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about inflation. We're going to talk about the Department of Justice and how they're becoming just so incredibly weak and politicized. I mean, yesterday they dropped the charges against the guy Sam Bankman-Fried, who was a huge donor to the Democrat Party, and he was charged with campaign finance violations, and they just dropped those charges. I mean, it's just bizarre the way things are going. And then we're going to talk about, what's the spiritual pulse of this country, what's going on. We're going to talk with somebody who's going to give us the scoop on that as well, and he's coming right out of New York City. So don't go anywhere. Don't move a muscle. We're just getting started.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We now know a big part of that reason for inflation was the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, broken supply chains, and excess profits, all hitting pocketbooks hard while padding corporate profits. By the way, I'm not against corporations. I come from the corporate capital of the world, Delaware. Well, seriously, more corporations incorporated in my state than every other state in the union combined. But they should pay their fair share.
All right. So many things there to take apart. I don't know where to start. So that's Joe Biden again. And he says that we now know that inflation is to blame on COVID and on excessive profits. I don't even know what an excessive profit is. Who defines an excessive profit? I am way too underqualified to dissect that soundbite. So we're bringing in the pros here. Vance Ginn, he's president of Ginn Economic Consulting. He's host of Let the People Prosper. That's a podcast. Make sure you check it out. He's also senior fellow with Young Americans for Liberty, and he's a former White House OMB Associate Director for Economic Policy. Vance Ginn, welcome back.
Hey, Rich, it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you. Likewise, man. So I'm listening here to our president, Joe Biden, and he says that corporate profits or excessive profits and COVID are to blame. But, hey, I'm not against corporations as long as they pay their fair share. I don't know what that even means. Can you help me make sense of that?
I don't think I can, but I think from his point of view, they need to pay their fair share as more. They just want to pay more in taxes so that way they can spend more. And that's really what, they've been rolling out this Bidenomics, which is a bunch of crap, but they're saying Bidenomics. And what they're saying is like, look, they're going to bring down inflation and everything else. But really, what have we seen? The highest inflation in 40 years. We now have the highest interest rates in 22 years. You have real wages. People's actual money that they can have purchasing power of has been declining for 26 straight months. How is this a good thing for the American people? And so while he's talking out one side of his mouth, the other side of the mouth is also causing problems for the American people because of all of his bad policy.
Yeah, Vance Ginn, I think this is, it's bizarre to me. And I try to be realistic. A big part of my job and my life is I have to always step out of what I believe and try to step into what maybe my listeners believe, because they're all over the place. And so I ask people, random people, where I get gas. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? I'm always asking. I'm like a wandering pole. And I'm always asking questions. And I feel like most people, when I ask them, do you feel like inflation's getting better? People only feel like inflation's getting worse. Yet the numbers, every time they come in, it says that it's down to 3%. Can I argue that that's not true? Has inflation not gone from 9 to 3%?
No, that's a good point, Rich. I mean, when you look at it from the Consumer Price Index, which is the measure that they use of a number of goods. What's that?
I said CPI. That's what they use.
CPI, exactly right. And so it's a basket of goods and services that's in there, and that the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out every month. But that is based on a basket of goods and services back in like 1982. That's when the base was of the year, when they have the index of 100, and then they look at that over time. So there's new goods, there's all these different factors that go into that. But what I also want to look at is not just the CPI, but there's also the personal consumption expenditures inflation report that's out there. And that one actually shows 4.1% right now, which is two times what the Federal Reserve would like the target to be, around 2%, which is still too high. But but really, Rich, what I like to look at is the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. And the government spending that we've had over the last couple of years of more than $6 trillion added to the national debt. A lot of that's just been monetized by the Fed to try to keep inflation rates down and interest rates down. And in the process, manipulate the entire economy. So I think Americans are feeling much higher inflation than what these indicators are showing us because of all their seasonal adjustments and all their modeling that they do. All those have been thrown off because of the bad policies over the last 2.5 years, 3 years.
100%. And that's the technical response. And I feel that's exactly what people feel, right? You could say what you want about these numbers, but people are feeling it otherwise. But on the other side of that, I feel like there are some people who, let's say people are making $250K, $300K, $400K. This inflation may have hurt them a little, but it didn't really drastically change their lifestyle. They just probably had to spend more of that disposable income that they had. What so many people who don't make $400K don't have. If you're making $66,000 a year or $48,000 a year, if you're a regular human being especially if you're that human being on the East Coast, you're living really tight. and inflation is strangling you. So I'm wondering,
Yes.
what is the message that Biden would have to them? And I know you don't have the answer to what he would say, but I'm just wondering, and I guess maybe putting on your political pundit hat for 5 seconds. Do you think people buy that and believe that when he says everything's going down and they're like, bro, I'm losing my shirt over here?
Yeah, and they can't pay their mortgages because appraisals are going up and their taxes are going up, and it's just one thing after another under this administration. And, I don't know that they have an answer. I mean, I think they have to play it off as well as they can to get the media on their side, which is not you, but most of the media is on their side. And so they can make their point for them if they just tout it enough time. And, in economics, we talk about public choice economics where these politicians are rational. They want to get reelected. And so they've got to talk a good game. And unfortunately, most of the mass media that's out there, the mainstream media, is just parroting what the administration is saying. And it's nonsense because, when you look at the unemployment rate, it shows 3.6%. But think about this, how many millions of people are now out of the labor force because they've been getting, welfare payments. Maybe they were living with their parents. And there's just so many things that have changed in the last couple of years. And that's all going to come home to roost for us when we have less productivity. We have labor shortages that are going on across the country. All this makes sense because of the gig government socialist policies that they've been putting in place.
Wow. Let me tell you, Vance Ginn, great explanation on that one. And again, I'm really curious to see if Joe Biden will become the politician that can sell a bad economy to the people and tell them it's a good one. Like I'm going to pee on your leg and tell you it's raining, because I just don't know that Bill Clinton, I think, was a skilled politician. And I think Joe Biden's a skilled politician, to be frank with you. You don't survive 40-something years in the Senate if you're not skilled. There's some skill there. I'm not saying he's eloquent or smart. I'm just saying he knows the thuggery of Washington. But I think he would be crossing a Rubicon, in my opinion, if he could sell this idea to the American people that we're doing well now, when I think we're not doing well. Yes, it's true that there's been some growth with GDP, and it's true that the job market isn't as bad as some thought it would be. And these are good things for our country. And I think Biden should be riding that wave. If I were his shoes, I would do that. But one thing I don't think he's going to win on, I hope he doesn't win on, is him telling us that inflation wasn't his fault in any way, and that somehow inflation's going down and things are really good. When I can't believe that they are. Let me remind everybody who you are, just in case anybody's tuning in right now. Folks, we're on with Vance Ginn. He's former Associate Director for Economic Policy at the White House Office of Management and Budget. And so he knows this stuff. He's an economist. And what I want to do, Vance, Ginn, straight ahead, is I want to get into this conversation of GDP, right? Because there's been GDP's risen a little bit, and despite the Fed tightening, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. So I think a lot of people hear these terms thrown around, and we don't know exactly how that looks in the long run. So I'd love to get your take on it. So stick with us, folks. We're on with Vance Ginn, and we're coming right back. If you have a question or a comment, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Our number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Our guest, Vance Ginn, former, I keep saying, Associate Director of OMB at the White House. And the caller is Bill from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA, America's oldest radio station. Bill, quickly, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. So I was telling the screener that I'm near Pittsburgh, very near Pittsburgh, and we have a lot of leftist talk show hosts on KDKA. It's a real shame. I mean, you want to...
Sorry to hear that. I just want you to know, in April, I think it was April, May, and June, maybe just May and June, the number one show on KDKA was this one. So thank you for listening, brother.
That sounds good, man. Because I mean, after they're gone, I mean, I'm with you.
Anyway, Bill, what's on your mind, brother?
Okay, one comment, because he didn't want to go to the screener basically filmed me and where you guys are at, and I'll say hi to your guests. And anyways, here in Pittsburgh area, gas has gone up like 8 cents just in a week for a gallon of gas. So we're pretty close now to $4 again, and I don't see it coming down. And the other thing that I have to say about Biden and Bidenomics, whatever he calls it, I think he has a hard time saying it too. So the other thing that I actually see going down, as far as anything, is Joe Biden.
I think you're right, Bill. I think you're 100% spot on. And thanks for the call. Vance Ginn, Bill in Pittsburgh says gas is up 8 cents, and the only thing going down is Biden. I don't know if he's right or wrong, but what do you think?
No, I think Bill's right on. I mean, gas prices are going up. Oil prices are going up. They've reached about $80 a barrel again after not being there for a little while, but they've continued to go up during the Biden administration after, they were pretty low under the Trump administration because energy was unleashed. The rules, the regulations, there were were being brought back, while at the same time permits were being given out. So there was a lot more oil and gas that was being produced. And instead of continuing that, which was good for Americans, like Bill and others, was the Biden administration came in, shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, put up all these new regulations, making it very difficult to produce, while at the same time draining our strategic petroleum reserve at a time when you're selling it at a lower price. Now they're buying it back at a higher price. It's doing a disservice for taxpayers on two fronts. And so I don't see the oil prices are going to go down anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a shame. I don't know who succeeded you in OMB at the White House, but doesn't seem like they're doing a good job or giving good advice to the president. I tell you, Vance Ginn.
Well,
let's go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I wanted to now circle back quickly, though, because I had this question for you, and I'm really curious about it, because I'm wondering, do we reach a point of diminishing returns, even though we're seeing growth in GDP, right? GDP's up 2.4%. The Fed is still tightening, meaning obviously they're raising rates, and that is in part shrinking the housing market. There's other factors, in my opinion, that are shrinking the housing market. But with all of that happening, we see GDP up. Is this sustainable? I'm glad that it's up, but does it stay up? And where do we go?
Yeah. And Rich, I know you like numbers. Probably some of your guests do too. And I don't want to get too technical, but I want to lay out just a couple of numbers here about what's going on with GDP for your audience to really understand what's happening here. So gross domestic product, the measure of total economic output in a country, the way they measure it by the Bureau of Economic Analysis is consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. That's how they compute these statistics that are all estimates from across the country. Take them for what you will, but at least it gives us some way to compare over time. The latest number...
It's not always real.
Q2, no, that's right. It's not always real. That's right. So, and there's a lot that's missing with it. It's not a perfect measure by any imagination, but that's what you're going to hear in the media and the Biden administration. So you need to know about it. But you're right. Q2 2023 was a 2.4% increase, which sounds pretty good. It's not great, like 3% like we were having in the Trump administration, but it's 2.4%. But there's something we need to think about. If government spending is in this equation, how do you pay for government spending? You have to pay for it through either taxes today or taxes in the future. So that's not growing the economy. And so if you look at the contributions of each one of those measures that go into GDP, government spending was 0.45 percentage points of that 2.4%. So I would subtract that out and look at the private sector only grew by 1.95%. It did not grow 2.4% because all that has to be taken out of and crowds out the productive private sector. So we're not growing that fast. All of 22 grew by 0.9%, so basically 1%. In three of the last five quarters, when you look at the real average of gross domestic product and gross domestic income, which is a good measure for the overall economy, has been negative 3 of the last 5 quarters. I really think we went into a recession in March of 2022, and we haven't come out yet. And that's why we still feel a lot of this malaise that's going on across the country, even though some of these indicators are making us think that things are good on the surface. There's a lot that's wrong underneath the hood.
Outstanding analogy. And that's why we like to have these conversations with guys like you that know how to make sense of this stuff. Because when I see that, and I think, again, I've got Biden telling me the economy's fantastic. Now I've got the Fed telling me that everything's fantastic. Everybody's telling me it's fantastic, yet I'm thinking, I just bought my daughter a used car, a pretty old one. Had low mileage, but it was still old. And I paid a fortune, I feel. I think the car should have been like $6,800, $7,000. I got them down to $8,200, and then with these fees and this, it ended up $9,600 for a 2007 Honda CR-V with very low mileage, almost new. But I was just blown away that, wow, I can't believe that, A, they're so scarce, and B, people are asking that much and getting it. It's just amazing to me. And that's just one item, a car. I'm thinking there's so many things you could buy. I'm looking at condos in Miami. Same thing. Everything's just ridiculously expensive and out of control. And meanwhile, I look at all this news every day, and all they can do is tell me how great everything is, and it doesn't match my pocket and my life. And I'm just wondering, maybe it's me, but I have a feeling it's not just me.
No, it's not just you, Rich. I mean, and you're right. Used car prices have still been up. They're coming down a little bit from where they were at the peak just a few months ago, but they're still way above where they were just a couple of years ago. And a lot of this, look, I mean, one of the things that caught my eye here recently was President Biden tweeted, or somebody tweeted for him, that, look at the economy, look at all the jobs that have been created. And my predecessor, he had declining job creation. And so what I quote tweeted him about, which is basically I just replied to him saying, what would you have done differently during the pandemic that Trump didn't do? Because the reason why there is decline over those 4 years, the only reason why is because of the pandemic and then the shutdown. Had the shutdowns not happened, there was a roaring economy before all that took place. And I don't think that Biden would have done – he wouldn't have done anything better. It would have been worse for the economy because whenever Biden came in 2021, the job creation was growing at a rapid pace, and it slowed down after he became president and passed this new $2 trillion bill that resurrected our economy and created inflation. So I was just like, look, what else would you have done differently? It would have been much worse had he been there at the time. Yeah,
and we've seen what he would do. We saw him come in and sign executive order after executive order and destroy the domestic energy production that we had achieved in a record number, right? For the first time, I think the term was energy dominant. Not just independent. Folks, we're on with Vance Ginn. He's a lot of things. He's all over the place. He's a very busy guy. We're glad that he came on with us tonight. He's president of Ginn Economic Consulting. He's host of his own podcast, Let the People Prosper. He's also with Young Americans for Liberty, where he's a senior fellow and former associate director of the White House Office of Management and Budget. And we're coming back with him. If you have any calls, the number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Folks, that's Bidenomics. It's about growing the economy and strengthening the middle class, making things in America again. Under trickle-down economics, it didn't matter where companies made things as long as it helped their bottom line. Even if that meant jobs and supply chains moved overseas. What did most of these guys do? They decided to send the jobs overseas where the labor was cheaper and bring the product made back to the United States more expensive. Entire towns and communities got hollowed out, not just here in Maine, but all across America. This is not just for Maine, this is of all of America. Small towns and medium-sized towns all across America. Factories got shut down. All over the country, parents saying to their children, honey, I'm sorry, I lost my job. We can't live here anymore.
So there's Joe Biden, who I like to call President Joe El Baboso Biden, which means he's like a bumbling, stumbling type of guy. And Joe El Baboso Biden is saying that trickle-down economics has hollowed out so many whatevers, he said. And our guest is Vance Ginn. Now, Vance Ginn is a pro. He knows what he's talking about. And I'm really curious to know, Vance Ginn, who is the inventor of trickle-down economics? Is this a convention of the left?
No, it's not actually. George H.W. Bush was the one who talked about it, what was it, 1988, right around that time, where he talked about trickle-down economics first.
And voodoo economics.
And voodoo economics, exactly right, exactly.
And 1,000 points of light.
Yeah, voodoo economics, exactly right. And but it's interesting how the left took that and then they just ran with it in this trickle-down economics, which is basically, that tax cuts are going to help out in their view, the rich, which will then hopefully trickle down to the lower income folks. What's interesting about all this is that the ones who are getting hurt by Bidenomics are the lower income people. They're getting crushed by this inflation, by the jobs that have been out there or not been out there, and moving around the shuffling of all these jobs with their subsidies and everything else. That they're just throwing all of our tax money out there throughout the economy and creating a lot of inflationary pressures at the same time. We're just hurting those very people. And so the socialism, this big government socialism that they're putting out there is really what more like trickle down economics, because it's the kings, it's the government that's controlling more things, and maybe we'll give some crumbs to those at the lower incomes. Maybe, but otherwise the Fed is going to print them away. The government's going to spend all of our money, and it's an unfortunate situation. Rich, one thing I was thinking about the other day and talking to somebody about is that Karl Marx, talked a lot about the proletariats overthrowing the bourgeoisie. But the people who are fighting back now are the poor to overthrow all this big government. It's really the flip side. It's not socialism that does that. It's capitalism that gives the most power to the lower income people in the process. And these people who want all this power at the top are big government folks like President Biden and others.
Vance Ginn, when we hear this, and you're 100% right on that, when we hear this idea that the left is fascinated with the term trickle-down economics, right? Because they're trying to pin it on, I think, every last person, trying to make it seem as if there's any economic system or idea that is proposed that they don't like, they will label it as trickle-down economics. But yet, when you look at true economic liberty, like a free market system like we have, that, in my opinion, it's what Marx called capitalism, is responsible for the real, true liberty of so many people, like being able to build wealth and make a life for themselves, and it was a positive thing, and it's just astounding to me how our system of a free market is kind of like the true marker of economic liberty, and yet it's constantly frowned upon by the left. Yeah.
No, it's a great point, and you're exactly right. I mean, you look at different measures of economic freedom. The Fraser Institute puts out one that it looks at economic freedom of the world. Places like Hong Kong, Denmark, Switzerland. Some of those actual Nordic countries are right near the top, because even though they have high taxes, they have nationalized health care and some of that more nonsense, they have free markets in much more ways than we do, with less regulation. A lot of other areas of their economy are very free. They actually rank higher than we do in the U.S., which is seventh most in the world. And I think, we have a mixed economy. We're not full free market capitalism, like where I would like for us to be one day, to where we have limited government spending, we have lower taxes, less regulation, and I think just unleash the potential for economic prosperity across the country. You know, if you think about our two biggest sectors in the economy, are healthcare and education, they're dominated by government. Between government spending, regulations, tax credits, and shifts, and redistribution of income around, and that's why we're not getting the results that we otherwise would had we had a free market healthcare system and school choice and a free market education system. Just think about how much more prosperous we would be, and that would shrink the size and scope of government at the same time. And so I think there are big things that I hope these Republican candidates, whenever they're coming out here going against Biden, can't just say that look, people are hurting and it's because of Bidenomics. We need to come out with a good free market capitalist message of how this is the path forward. This is the vision that we need, because if not, we're going to be in a world of hurt. We're looking at massive deficits for the future of over $2 trillion. Net interest debt on the interest payments are going to be more than national defense. We've got to turn this around, and the time is now.
Vance Ginn, you're a gentleman and a scholar and a patriot, sir. I want to remind everybody that they can check out your writings at Vance Ginn, that's GINN.substack.com. I want to thank you for being here, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rich. It was a pleasure with you today.
Yes, sir. Likewise. Godspeed. Have a great weekend. Folks, we're coming right back. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And a quick reminder, if you want to be helpful, if you want to do me a favor, if you will, I have been tasked with reminding our audience here, you all, the wonderful listeners of this program, about the nomination that this program has received for the People's Choice Podcast Award. Now, this award is for our coverage of government organizations and other organizations, and I'm thrilled to be part of the nomination and grateful to you all that have decided to vote. So if you do want to vote for America at Night with Rich Valdez as the People's Choice Award for that category of government and organizations, all you got to do is register your email so that you can vote. Easy as pie. What you do is you go to podcastawards.com, podcastawards, plural.com, and you put in your email. I think you got to put in the name of the show as well, which is Rich Valdez, America at Night. And then you, I think you have to type my name in somewhere, and that's it. When you go to the Podcast Awards page, it's podcastawards.com. There'll be a little blue box toward the top of the screen. You can click on that, and you'll be registered to vote. And the election is, I don't know, I think it's starting next week. So be sure to do that if you're interested in doing that. I appreciate it, and thank you for even considering it. And anyway, we're coming right back. We're going to find out what happened with Sam Bankman-Fried and all those campaign finance violations. We're going to get to the bottom of that and a lot more. 833-4VALDEZ is the number. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez, and we're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S at the end, on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Friday evening, keeping you company till 1 in the morning. Pull up a chair, kick your feet up, stick with us. This is going to be a really good hour. We just had a great hour, and we also have an hour after this, so get comfy. Now, listen, we got a lot to talk about, and we were just talking about the economy, and it's a very important topic, but just as important is finding out what happened with Sam Bankman-Fried. Like, how did we get to where we are, right? There was such a big banking collapse, where actually the FTX, rather, crypto bank, if you will, crypto exchange, better said, and a lot of malfeasance, or at least alleged and, to me, apparent malfeasance of how this whole thing went down. But Sam Bankman-Fried was a big donor. I think at one point they said he was the largest donor, or the second largest donor behind Soros, I remember hearing, of Democrat politicians. Big mega donor to the Democrat Party. And he was charged eventually with campaign finance violations by the Department of Justice. However, those charges were dropped quite unceremoniously, very, very, somewhat quietly. There wasn't much fanfare, and many of us are just none the wiser. And this man, who should be held accountable, in my opinion, isn't being held accountable. And I think we need to know why. So for that, I decided to connect with somebody that knows exactly what's going on, and that's Gregory Stenstrom. He's a former U.S. naval officer, co-founder of Patriot Online, a digital privacy ecosystem and social media platform. He's also the author of the book Parallel Election, a blueprint for deception. And Gregory Stenstrom is with us. Gregory, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
You bet. So I want to talk a little bit about.
Topic.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important for us to know what's going on. So help us break it down. Give us a little bit of the background here on, the charges that Sam Bankman-Fried was facing, and now this about face from the federal government.
Well, Sam Bankman-Fried was, the FTX, the author of that, cryptocurrency fraud, stole billions of dollars. The number, I think, in 2020 was $90 million, and just as recent as the 2022 midterm election, he gave, my understanding from what I've read, he gave $40 million, and so he's donated primarily to the Democrat Party, and what they did is they're just letting him off, and they're going to keep the money. So it's DOJ dropped the charges, and they think that's that, but it's indicative. The reason I'm on the show is for the parallel election in 2020, and how does election fraud happen? How does the DOJ drop charges like this? And I just filed allegations with of criminal allegations against U.S. Attorney General Barr, former U.S. Attorney General Rosen, Christopher Wray, and Michael Horowitz from the SIGI, from the IG directors, the IG General's office, and together they're called the Council. And it was a council was formed in 1978. Where I'm going with this is this small group of individuals. They basically do whatever they want with the government, and when people ask who's running the government, it's them. And they're the ones who decide who gets prosecuted and who doesn't get prosecuted, what investigation goes forward, what investigation doesn't. And my charges and allegations, which were filed with Jim Jordan and the House Judiciary Committee on July 4th, they specifically state that these group of people from the DOJ, they federally obstruct investigations and they manipulate investigations. And a good example is Sam Bankman-Fried, the election of 2020, Hunter Biden, putting together that plea deal that Judge Narika just rejected. Pretty brave on her part. And a lot of the ills and ailments of our country right now are directly related to these people who I've submitted formal charges against. And we have dozens of whistleblowers right now lined up who are submitting similar outrageous. Just the things these people have done are outrageous. So that's how it happened, and that's what we're doing.
Well, Gregory Stenstrom, I want to thank you for sharing all of that with us, because it really is an interesting turn of events. Things change so quickly. We're seeing so much movement. And it's fascinating to me how, there's just so much information out there. And I'm grateful that you joined us tonight. His book, again, Parallel Election, A Blueprint for Deception. Make sure you check that out, and check him out at patriot.online as well. Gregory Stenstrom, thank you so much for joining us. Don't move a muscle. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So we've got all sorts of allegations against all sorts of people. There's a lot of ugly stuff coming from the administrative state, the cloak and dagger types in Washington, the deep state, if you will. The guys who turned off our phone last night, and yes, we did pay the bill. Amazing, right? Whenever we talk about China or bring somebody that they don't like, it's just ironic that the phones just stop working or this and that. I mean, it's just, I'm not wearing my tinfoil hat, I promise you. But I just find it funny. And we're working on rescheduling Mayor Giuliani to come back on with us maybe next week, since, it took us a half hour to get the phone back working when we had him scheduled yesterday. Now, in addition to all of the harassment that we see against so many different people in politics, that nobody gets it worse than President Trump, right? The 45th president of these United States, former President Trump, who's candidate Trump now again, and he's doing really well in the at this stage of the polls, kicking butt, taking names. And he was doing an interview with Breitbart News yesterday and discussing what it's like to have special counsel Jack Smith and this additional indictment that they've tacked on, these additional charges. And here's what he had to say. Check this out.
Just before we sat down here, the special counsel put out a superseding indictment. What that means is additional charges against you on the documents case, as well as they added another defendant, the head of maintenance down at Mar-a-Lago. What's your? I don't know if you've had a chance to review this. What's your response to it?
I just heard it as I'm sitting down. This is harassment. This is election interference. I'm protected by the Presidential Records Act, totally. It shouldn't even be a case. It's not a criminal case. Where's Biden with all the documents? He's got 20 times, 30 times the documents I have, and he has not made it easy for them either. They're hiding boxes. They're sending boxes to Chinatown. Boxes are being sent to Chinatown, and yet China's paying them millions of dollars. You explained that one, and you don't even hear about it. All you hear about is Trump. No, this is a two-tier system of injustice. And that's what we have. We have a sick country. Our country is very sick right now. We have a failing nation, and it's a very, very sad thing to watch.
As many times as I hear President Trump respond to these things, I got to tell you, each and every time, I think he's so accurate in it. I really do. You know, when he says this is sick, it is sick. And it's a sickness. It's an illness. It is a rot, a cancer, if you will, inside our body politic that is just eating away and eroding the very fabric of the republic that we were designed to be. When the founders created this place and came up with this idea of what the United States should be eventually, what we're seeing today is not what they had in mind. I mean, that's got to be clear to everybody. It just isn't. Of course not. Some people are listening going, of course not, Rich, because what they envisioned then were a bunch of white people that thought that only white people would own property and women wouldn't vote and nobody of color would ever. Listen, there were some people that thought that too. I'm not going to argue that. But that wasn't the point. They envisioned a country that was sovereign from the English crown, from the tyranny of King George. And it's so evident when you look at the Constitution, which subsequently, right here, listen to it. It's framed right next to me. I keep it next to me to remember. I don't memorize it. I don't know it. I have a small pocket one that I keep to my right, and I have this right on my left. So I could quickly look at it and see it if I need to. And I think we should all have some, perusal of the Constitution on a regular basis because it's so important. And we've gone so far away from that, which, in my opinion, moors us, right? We are unmoored now. It's like we're not connected to any of our roots. We constantly trash this document because some professor, some liberal professor in an ivory tower says that we should. They just, it's an outdated document. I remember once listening to one of my radio mentors, the great one, Mark Levin. I was in the control room. He was in the studio doing a great job, as he always does. And he was saying, just imagine if people were to change contracts, the way they want to change the Constitution. Change your car note. Change your mortgage. And in my head, I was thinking, yeah, you're 100% right. Just imagine that. Just imagine, me calling my bank and saying, this deal that I have with you for X percent every month and this many dollars per month, this is a living, breathing document. And, back in 1999, when we started this deal, it made sense then, but it doesn't make sense today. Or, back in 2022, it made a lot more sense. But now that it's 2024, no, not so much. I mean, these are such nonsensical arguments, in my opinion, that it's outdated, or to say that the document is living and breathing. Or even to suggest that, well, at that time, they didn't have automatic weapons. We didn't have computers. We didn't have the internet. So all of a sudden now, every last founding document of our country, all of our history, all of it's null and void because, well, we have Instagram now. We have the internet now. I could never, ever accept that. I think that is, it's crazy to think that that's the case. But that is lamentably how so many people think. And look, if you can't call your mortgage company, your bank, or your landlord and say, hey, look, by the way, I think I want to renegotiate. You could do that if you can try it. But nobody's going to allow you to say, yeah, no, listen, my car note, my mortgage, whatever, I'm going to, it's a living, breathing document. And I feel like this is the better interpretation of it. No, it just doesn't work that way. And the fact that we, fall victim to these boberias, I'm going to call them, these silly things, it is, it's annoying to me, right? It's annoying and it shouldn't happen, right? We should be well-versed in our founding documents. We should be very aware and informed of how our country works and how to be civically engaged. And like Reagan said, we have to be informed patriots. I think there's no other way about it. Anyway, I want to continue. Let me see. Where do we go from here? We're going to go to... There was a cut that I wanted to discuss here. Yes. So Will Hurd. Yesterday somebody said, this guy would be a great vice president. I think it was my buddy Gil from the Philippines, and I love Gil. He's terrific. I disagree in so much as I don't think he's very effective. And I'll ask you a question. What is that landmark piece of legislation that Will Hurd is famous for? I'll hold. That's right. I don't know either. None of us do. He's not famous for anything, right? There's no Hurd doctrine. There's no any of these things. Now, why? Because this guy, in my opinion, he just doesn't stand for a ton. And if I'm wrong, if I'm speaking out of the wrong end, please, Mr. Hurd, correct me and come on the show. And just like other candidates like Pompeo and Ramaswamy and Trump, you can come on this program and we can have a conversation. They're all welcome to come. The issue that I have here is when you run your entire campaign, not on what, like Kennedy said, asking not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. What is it that you can do for us? And lamentably, Mr. Hurd, he's focused on beating up on Donald Trump. Listen to this.
Donald Trump is running to stay out of prison. And if we elect... I know. Listen, I know the truth. The truth is hard. But if we elect Donald Trump, we are willingly giving Joe Biden 4 more years in the White House, and America can't handle that. God bless you, and God bless America.
Wow. He couldn't get not even halfway through the sentence without getting booed. And you know why? He's a clown. This was clownish. No serious person goes to say, hey, I'm running for president of the United States. And as president, as a former congressman, by the way, as president, I'm going to tell you that we can't elect Donald Trump because he's nobody, blah, 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 and he's, whatever he just said, he's a national security threat, whatever crazy rhetoric he used, I already forgot. He's running to stay out of jail. That's it. Come on. Nobody in that crowd thought he was serious. So what is Will Hurd doing? Is somebody paying him just to be a thorn in the side, saying, hey, look, you need a job since you left Congress, you want to run for president, just take shots at Trump? Make sure that, you could pay yourself a really good amount of money through the campaign and, maybe it'll get you out of a jam, maybe make 200, 300, 400 grand this year. What do you think? And he says, sure, why not? I mean, that's my suspicion. That's my supposition. If I'm wrong, Mr. Hurd, Congressman Hurd, please correct the record. You're welcome to join us. But I just don't see where the benefit was and how he could expect anyone to take him seriously. And then to double down and say, look, I know the truth hurts. Really, bro? Come on, man. You've got to do better than that. I mean, if your entire campaign, like my former boss, Chris Christie, I was a member of his administration, and he's doing the same thing. We must be forward-facing. Yet talk bad about Biden and what you can do good for America. But don't tell me why Trump isn't effective, because that doesn't tell me anything about you. Anyway, don't go anywhere. Don't move a muscle. More to come straight ahead. We continue our conversation, so keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez, and our phone number, 833-482-5337. As you know, we are just minutes away at the top of the hour from Open Phone America. This is a tradition on this program from the days of Larry King and the days of the late, great Jim Bohannon, and we continue them today. So feel free to jot that down, 833-4-Valdez. Call in on topic with the guest, or in the third hour, it's that, who was it? Is that Hannity or Rush that calls it the final hour free-for-all? But that's what it'll be today because it's Friday, and we're definitely gonna have an excellent Open Phone America last hour of the program. Now, we have a guest with us, and we're talking about a lot of things. I want to talk about the situation of hope in America, because I feel like so many Americans feel hopeless because of all of the negative news that we see and so much of what's happening with the economy. And it's just like people feel downtrodden. But our guest says revival is coming. And I want to welcome Pastor Mike Signorelli from New York City to the program. Pastor, welcome.
Rich, it's so good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's an honor and it's a pleasure. So there's a few things I want to talk about. I want to get your perspective on hope in America and in particular New York City, right? That's where your church is. And of course, I want to talk about the Domino Revival, the story of it. I know there's a documentary, a groundbreaking new documentary that's coming out, and I want everybody to watch it. But I want to know the background to it and what led up to it. And we've got 3 segments to get to all of that. So let's start off. Pastor Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, Rich, I know you said revival's coming, but I think in a lot of ways it's already here, and we're seeing some incredible things happening. It might not necessarily get a ton of news, and publicity, but slowly Americans are starting to really wake up to the fact that something has to change. And we're just in the very beginning stages of seeing what I believe is a legitimate movement.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it because, again, from where I am perched, and again, I'm a native New Yorker. We broadcast a show out of New York. I live in Jersey now. And I can tell you that whenever I'm in Manhattan during the daytime, I can tell you it's a sad state of affairs, what I see going on. And I won't say I'm hopeless, but I could see how people feel terrible. They just they're just existing. They're surviving. They're not thriving. And tell us more about the revival that you think is here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm here in New York City, and I see a lot of what you're talking about. And, sometimes people have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think we're really reaching that point, especially the last several years where people are saying, you know what, there has to be something else. There's a big movie out that was called The Jesus Revolution. And it really talked about in the late 60s into the 70s here in the United States, we had the hippie movement, which, as you know, is free love, recreational drug use. And really, at first, it sounded like a great idea. But several years into that, people said, wow, we've had unwanted pregnancies and, we've gotten sexually transmitted diseases. And, then the drug use turns into addiction and for some people, premature death. And so at the end of the hippie movement is a Jesus movement. And so in the same way, here we are now in the 2020s. And, people, especially here in New York City, they're doing the same things. They're thinking, I'm going to meet a need through all kinds of things that the Bible would call sin. And they're reaching the end of that. And they're saying, you know what, this didn't satisfy me. There's got to be something beyond the drugs. There's got to be something beyond the promiscuous lifestyle. And they're finding Jesus again. And there's a reason why Jesus Revolution did so well in the box office. It's not because it was a great movie. It's because what happened in the 60s and 70s, I believe we have the conditions for a second Jesus movement right now. And that's really, we're starting to see it in New York City. I'm seeing it in my church against all the odds. We know that churches are actually on the decline here in the U.S. and church attendance is going down. And yet we're seeing the complete opposite of that right now. So it's a very incredible time, and we're in the beginning of something amazing.
Do you feel like you're doing something differently that you've done in the past or differently than other churches are doing to see that increase versus a decline? Because, I mean, just a week ago or two, there was a big story about so many churches closing their doors or splitting off from their main denomination and just withering on the vine. And I'm just curious to know, do you think it's something different that you guys are doing at your church? Or is it maybe where you're located, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, listen, the word revival, it's the prefix re, which means again. And so sometimes I think especially in modern times, we think that the new idea is the best idea, but sometimes the new idea is the worst idea. And so I really believe that it's not us doing something new, it's us doing something old. And, you know, for me, it was shocking because I just started to repeat the actual words of Jesus and speak really boldly and without compromise on these issues. And it's a funny thing, Rich, people want to hear the truth. And when you tell them the unadulterated truth, and I think there's a lot of pastors, you know, I say there's a lot of pastors who are compromised and they don't want to offend people. But I've been saying I'd rather offend you to heaven than people please you all the way to hell. And so it's just been me actually trying to preach the gospel the way Jesus did, and people are responding to it.
Folks, we are on with Pastor Mike Signorelli, founding pastor of V1 Church in New York City. And we're going to come back and talk about the Domino Revival, this new film that features everything that he's talking about. So don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Of course, we're going to go to your calls, and our guest is Pastor Mike Signorelli, founding pastor of V1 Church in New York City. He's got an upcoming documentary called The Domino Revival, and we're talking about how America's not as hopeless as so many people paint her to be, but hope is on the way, and Pastor Mike says the revival is here. It's amongst us, and we're starting to see the fruits of that revival. Paul is in Zanesville, Ohio on WHIZ, great station, and he has a question for Pastor Mike. Paul, welcome. You're on with Pastor Mike Signorelli and Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich and Pastor Mike. I seen something today on ticker tape on Newsmax that said the fox is at the west wall prophecy. Now, I don't know what that meant. You know, I don't know what the west wall is. I don't know what they're talking about, but the fox is at the wall, and it was a prophecy. And, you know, I just wondered if you knew anything about that and what that meant, sir. I'd like to respond.
Paul. Pastor Mike? Want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, Paul, you know what? I'm not really aware of that prophecy and to actually speak on it. Although I do know that, you know, we're in some very interesting times and there's a lot of people prophesying right now because there's a sense that there's definitely something happening. So I'm not entirely sure the specifics on that one, though.
And, you know, this is an interesting time in life where I think everybody, like I said, is looking for some type of hope. And Paul, I thank you for that. The what I find, I guess, what stands out to me, the standout here, is that everybody's looking for hope. Yet we're in a time where everybody's rejecting, or at least not everybody, but many people are rejecting where hope comes from above. And I don't know how to reconcile that, Pastor Mike.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're living in a day and age where we are now decades beyond people trying to do life with God, and we're finding out rapidly that it's impossible. And I think, you know, we've lived in this delusion where, hey, we've created our own problems, so therefore we can solve our own problems. But that's not the message of the Bible. The message of the Bible is that we are created by God. And no matter how hard we try to solve our own problems with our own abilities, we actually need God. And so revival is really a return to that belief. And I think so many people are filled with anxiety and depression right now. Because, I mean, quite frankly, when you're the source of all the problems, but you're also the source of all the solutions, that's a heavy burden, and that produces a lot of anxiety. But revival occurs when people say, you know what, wait a second, God created me, and he has a plan even when I don't have a plan, and all I've got to do is submit and surrender to him. And so we're really seeing a lot of people step into that belief again, and it's been liberating for so many people.
Outstanding. Folks, we're on with Pastor Mike Signorelli, founding pastor of V1 Church, and that's in New York City. And he's part of the upcoming documentary, The Domino Revival. Straight ahead, we're going to talk a little bit about the Domino Revival. And before we get into that trailer, I have a clip of the trailer that I want you to hear. I want to go to Ohio, to Bonnie. She's calling from Silver Lake, Ohio. And Bonnie, welcome. You're on with Pastor Mike Signorelli and Rich Valdez. It's a pleasure. Go right ahead.
I am on with you guys.
You are live. Go right ahead.
Oh, my gosh. I wish I was in my living room listening to myself. I am telling you something right now. I am an 80-year-old woman, and I will tell you something. I have my moments, but I'll tell you something. This country that called the United States of America is in big trouble right now. And I'm calling you. I would not say it's the United States of America, and I would not say it's a country to be proud of. It's a disgrace that we're living through right now.
What makes you say that? What in particular, Bonnie?
Well, I'll tell you something. At my age and stage in life, I didn't think I was going to be on the air or talking to anybody, really. I thought I was going to have time to think this through, but I am on my radio. I just think I would not. The other day I was someplace, they were pledging to the flag, and I thought, I am not proud to be an American. I will not pledge allegiance to a flag that's one nation under God. I would say we are one nation under God's judgment, and we better wake up and smell the roses, because we're in bad shape.
So your thought is that we've gone far from honoring God, and you're fearful of the judgment of God and the wrath, I guess, that comes with that disobedience.
I'll tell you something. You said it beautifully. This country as a whole, what I hear on my radio, and I'm a radio lover, I will tell you, I am ashamed to even say I'm an American today. I know I live free.
It's a tough time. It's like family. You know, some of your family members, you might not be thrilled about that one crazy uncle, but he's still your crazy uncle. Bonnie, don't give up on America yet. Pastor Mike, stick with us. Well, actually, we have a moment for you to respond before we get to the trailer. What do you think? Do we make it out winning, or are we toast?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, Bonnie, I think voiced something that many Americans are feeling right now. But I will tell you this. I've been traveling all across this country, and I've been bringing people to a place of repentance. And I am encouraged because from Gen Z all the way to those who are retirement age, I'm seeing people actually repent, and they just need to be given the opportunity. And I think that right now more than ever, we need to draw people to that place to make a decision, not to be 99%, but 100% in repentance, and to hand it all over to Jesus. And when you do that, people do respond. They do respond. And so for me, yes, we're in a very dark time, but at the same time, that's when the light shines the brightest.
Pastor Mike, thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate it. Big shout out to everybody in WNIR country. Bonnie, you're a doll. You're a sweetheart, and we thank you for the call. Don't lose heart. Fear not, right? The Bible says that, I don't know, I think enough times for every day of the year. So fear not, Bonnie. Things will get better. Folks, we're coming right back with Pastor Mike, and we're going to hear that trailer from his film.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And without further ado, I want you to hear the trailer for the upcoming documentary film, The Domino Revival.
The Bible isn't the story of what happened. It's the story of what always happens. Society is attempting to redefine right and wrong. God's people are being faced with a decision. Do I bow in fear or stand for truth?
It might look like it's dark. It might look like it's impossible. But I say I serve a God who deals in the impossible. Nothing is too hard for him. At his words, demons tremble.
Pastors already think I'm crazy, so I don't have anything to prove to anyone anymore.
The doctors told you you'd always be on medication. The surgeons told you there's no procedure.
You need a physical healing in your body, but I want to give you the healer, not just the healing. This is about the gospel.
The reality of God should change everything about our life and the world around us.
Powerful, powerful stuff right there. The Domino Revival. Pastor Mike Signorelli, tell us what's the next step? If everybody's intrigued and interested and they want to support the film, watch the film, and learn more about it, what do they do? Where do they go?
Yeah, this is probably one of the most important moments for somebody who's hearing the sound of my voice right now, because we have an opportunity to do something about everything that we're seeing in our world right now. October 24th, we are going to fill movie theaters across the United States. And not only is this movie going to premiere, but they're giving me 30 minutes at the conclusion of this movie to do a simulcast revival service across America. And people are going to cancel suicides. People are going to surrender drugs and paraphernalia and break addictions. And people are going to repent and give their life to Jesus Christ. And we're going to use every single movie theater available that they give us. And so tickets are already selling. But we want to make sure that we fill up every theater in America and show everyone we're ready. We're ready for true revival. We're ready for another awakening. And now is the time. So we are just so excited for what's going to happen.
Outstanding. I could hear it. I mean, your voice is exuding that excitement, and I can't wait, A, to see it, and B, to really hopefully witness and partake in this revival, because I don't know. I'm one of those people that wants to be hopeful, even though I may feel hopeless from time to time because of all the news we consume. Ultimately, the end of the day, I think we do end in victory. Pastor Mike Signorelli, I want to thank you for being with us. Let everybody know how they can follow you or keep in touch with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. Thank you so much for having me on. This was incredible. If you all go to MikeSignorelli.com, you can find more information about the movie, as well as just other teachings and things I have available. But it's all at MikeSignorelli.com.
Outstanding. And is there a separate website for the movie?
Yes, FathomEvents.com. It's the Domino Revival movie.
Outstanding. Thank you, Pastor Mike. Godspeed to you, brother. Continue the work that you're doing. And folks, Open Phone America is coming up straight ahead. 833-4-VALDEZ. 833-482-5337. Don't move a muscle. We're just getting started.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you this evening. And again, if you want to join us tonight, I encourage you to do so. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez is our phone number, and it's Open Phone America. We're going to talk about lots of things that we're going to talk about tonight, and whatever you want to bring to the table. Happy to have that discussion. Now, one of the things I want to bring to your attention is this story I'm looking at here of AOC, all out crazy, our least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, at least mine. And AOC, all out crazy's campaign keeps paying for Chinese foreign agents, and this is according to her FEC filings. Yep. Representative Congresswoman AOC from the Bronx and Queens, AOC all out crazy, her campaign has been pushing campaign cash to a Chinese foreign agent. The New York Democrats campaign paid $442 to Tsingtao newspapers May 25th for print advertising, according to her campaign records. While it's a small expense, AOC's committee appears to be the only one to place advertisements in that paper during the second quarter. Her campaign previously sent $5,000 to the company for the same exact purpose. Tsingtao is the United States subsidiary of the Hong Kong-based Tsingtao News Corporation, and back in August of 2021, the United States Justice Department required the Chinese-owned company to register as a Chinese foreign agent as tensions rose between Washington and Beijing. So, in effect, Congresswoman AOC is paying money into a foreign agent. Ain't that something? A Chinese-owned newspaper that the government is saying is a foreign agent. It doesn't surprise me that this is happening. I mean, this is from our least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, but it is happening nonetheless. So I'd like your thoughts on that and everything else that we've been talking about tonight. Our phone number, 833-4-Valdez. Let's go to the phones here and see what we've got. We've got a few people who have been holding on for quite a while. Let's go to Robert, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Robert, what do you think about AOC's advertising in the Chinese paper? Sounds pretty fair, reasonable, and normal, right? She's just advertising for the Chinese members in her district. What say you?
Absolutely. I say absolutely, because every time you go into a store and buy something that says made in China and little letters on the back, you're doing exactly the same thing she's doing. And American people are doing it many, many times more than she's doing. She's buying a little advertisement in the newspaper, maybe, but all of us are buying tens of millions of products made in China, maybe billions of products made in China, and realizing it's right there in print. All you got to do is turn the product over, flip it over, and it says made in China. You are supporting the People's Republic of China, the Communist Party. That's who you're supporting.
Outstanding observation, Robert. Let me tell you, I years ago had not that many years ago, like 2 or 3, I had an argument with my brother. Not an argument, but discussion. And different brother than I normally talk about. And he was telling me, listen, Richie, you got to stop buying stuff that's made in China. I said, Joe, how could we do that? How do I get to a place where if everything that's made out of plastic is in effect made in China, how do I escape it? And he said, look, you just got to start trying. You've got to just stop doing the obvious and start to make an effort. And I did. You know, one day it really hit me. I said, you know what? The only way to get away from this is to break the addiction that we have. You know, you spend a little bit more on this, you spend a little bit more on that. Before you know it, you're spending a lot more on many things. But the satisfaction that knows that you're buying something that was made in Bangladesh or Vietnam is, rather than China, somewhat more palatable, I would say, for me. And I do appreciate that advice. So, Robert, I think you're right. I think so many of us are, if we're buying made in China, we can't criticize AOC for paying off the Chinese newspaper. I think that's a fair point. And let's see. Thank you for your call, brother. I appreciate it. Have a great. What did you? I'm sorry. I think you had one more thing you wanted to say, Robert. Go right ahead.
Yes, I also wanted to say the father of the Great October Revolution, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, once said, religion is the opiate of the people. He knew 100% that the people would be back to it. As a matter of fact, secretly, they believed in God, many people in the Soviet Union. But if they did, and if government found out about it, they would just think the guy's a little nuts, or the woman's a little nuts. But don't put her in an important position because she's a little nuts. Things might go south. So they kept that in mind. But at the same time, God never ever left every person in the former Soviet Union. It just doesn't happen. And Vladimir Ilyich Lenin knew it.
Now, is this something that you would you give him credit for, and you think he's kind of visionary for saying that?
No, I don't think he's a visionary. I think he just knew it. I mean, he was not a stupid guy.
No.
And he was the only guy, incidentally, that Joseph Stalin couldn't kill. You can't kill the father of the revolution, but you could kill everybody else. But he had Vladimir Ilyich Lenin on ice the whole time till he died in 1924. But Vladimir Ilyich Lenin actually died of syphilis. He went nuts and got up on a table and started playing a bird. But cuckoo, cuckoo, that's what he was doing before he died. But the Communist Party kept that a secret. Very few people know that he actually died of syphilis, because that would be a great embarrassment for the Soviet Union. I happen to know that because I know somebody who was in the innermost circle of Joseph Stalin. I met her as a very old woman. I knew her daughter and her granddaughter. And
wow. How'd you do that? How'd you pull that off? It's like a girlfriend of yours?
Actually, she came to No, she actually taught me Russian, and her mother came with her to the United States as a very old woman, and so also did her daughter.
Wow. Well, excellent point. And when we come back, thank you, Robert. I appreciate it. Interesting history. I wasn't aware of all of that. But I will tell you what I was a little bit aware of was the good professor from Grove City College who wrote the book The Devil and Karl Marx, Paul Kengor. Terrific book. And in the description for this book, there is a excellent quote from Karl Marx, and I'm going to share it with you when we come back. Keep the calls coming in. I see we've got calls from all over the place. South Dakota, South Carolina, Florida, New York, you name it, we're coming at you. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So Karl Marx, in a poem that he wrote in 1837, this is a full decade before he wrote the Communist Manifesto, he wrote, "Thus heaven I've forfeited. I know it full well. My soul, once true to God, is chosen for hell." And this is, in my opinion, Marx clearly admitting that you can't adhere to the ideology that he believed in and preached if you wanted to hold on to your soul and have your soul be true to God. But you'd have to forfeit it. You'd have to forfeit heaven. And I thought it was remarkable that he said that, but it's, to me, the crux, the truth, the anchor of what communism is. It's a godless philosophy that is perverse, as Kengor points out, and has been the cause of over 100 million deaths in the 20th century alone. And that is what Marx peddled and preached. So just hold on to that for a second. And I want to also just share something with you very quickly. There's an amazing story. There's a bunch. Right? I'm going to give you a couple. Carly Russell, remember her, the lady with the kidnapping? She's been charged. I'll give you a little bit of an update on that in a moment. And there's some crazy story. I don't know if I'll have time to get into this, what this guy did and how much he paid to turn himself into you don't know what. And there's a crackdown on ketchup packets. Oh, my goodness. There's so much good stuff to talk about here. But I know there's a few of you that are on the line holding on very patiently that wanted to make a comment. So I want to go to my buddy Pat in Sedona, Arizona, listening on KDGO in Durango, Colorado, streaming live. Pat, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Thanks. You took me right away. I feel special. Thank you.
You are
You're
special,
always a gentleman.
brother.
Yeah, I listened to that poor woman from Ohio and how she's ashamed of the country. And, before all this happened, there were probably groups of people, the ones who are in charge now, that were ashamed of this country and ashamed of the way this country was looked at to the world. And I'm going to tell you one thing. Don't ever give up on the old girl. Liberty is to believe in. And I've known so many people who have given everything they have for that liberty. And when it gets down to it, if we have to go to war amongst ourselves, which would be so sad and so wrong in this country, that we've got a good country. We've got a good place to live, people. And I'm going to tell you something. It's what we hear and what we don't see. And that's our media. And Rich, you're a bright, shining star if you consider yourself media. I consider you a truth sayer. A man who's trying to find the truth. You're not perfect, but you're trying to find it with the callers and your excellent guests you have. But I'm going to say this, that it's the media that is bending the elbow of the American voter, the American worker, and everything. They're lying about. I mean, look what Joe Biden's son. We're just watching right now. The kid's walking through, and he's going nah towards all of us because he's going to get away with it. Maybe, who knows? I mean, there's so many stories. Who knows what's really truth anymore? I mean, you try to find it, unless you see it yourself. And it's maddening. And the most thing that I think we should really try to protect is our kids, our children, our most precious possession this country has. It's not all the money and all the power. It's our future, and our future is our children and our schools. And I'm telling you, people who don't have children like me, I mean, you got to go to school boards. You got to in a calm and a educated way, talk to them how you believe all this race theory and all this transgender stuff should get out of our schools. And our schools should be teaching our children how to become citizens of our country and the world. And it may sound like I'm a little nutty, but I just believe that, I just believe that we're going in the wrong direction with the future that way of our children and how we're letting our public schools, because I know so many people are going to be pulling their kids out of schools, and that's wrong. I mean, our public schools can teach another generation. They've done it for years. It's just somebody, it's like Einstein. Here's a quote, and I'll leave it at this quote. Einstein says, "We cannot use the same amount of energy that we use to get ourselves in trouble. We have to use a whole another lot more of energy to get out of it." You have to think that way. We're in deep. We're in deep. It's getting deep out there, and we see how crooked our government is. How it doesn't work. Now, it's not every government employee or senator or congressman, but there's a lot going on that's not right. The crime that happens in New York City, the crime that happens in Chicago. They're getting numb when a child in a crib gets shot. That's wrong. That's totally wrong. People have to hide in bathtubs because they're afraid of getting shot when there's absent gunfire between gangs. And our attorney generals in our states have all been bought and sold. My state, our governor has been bought and sold.
You're right, Pat. And you know what's interesting here is, first, I want to thank you. You said some really nice things to me, about the program, and I appreciate your kind words. I really do. It's humbling. But I also want to say that I think you're right. And, everything you just said is spot on. We have a crime problem. We have a cultural problem. Like we've embraced a culture of doing the wrong thing. And that's something we have to reject. And just right out of hand, just reject it off the bat, because we can't allow our kids to go astray. Right? If you do, what's left? If you have a society where kids have no respect, where kids are derelict, this is what happens. I feel like we're at that place now. You said our public education system has educated kids for decades. I think part of that is the problem. And we're seeing that today. So many of these kids have become adults. They're in positions of power, and they're clearly not doing the right thing. So I'm in agreement with you, and I think the only way we get past this and we fix this and we change it and we reverse course is by doing just that, getting involved, going to the school board meetings like you suggested, starting at different levels of government, getting into the media, taking your ideas into the public square, sharing them and getting them in front of other people so that you can organize and create a movement, because that's ultimately what moves people. Movements move people. Our most positive thoughts and complaints don't. Pat, excellent call. I really appreciate it, and I hope you're doing all right with the heat out there. Man, it was hot today. Listen to this. So I knew it was going to be hot today, and I wanted to try this new coffee. Now, I know you're thinking, are you being disloyal to your Cuban friend? No, my Cuban friend sold his restaurant. So the new proprietors opened up, and, same restaurant, just new people. And they're, I think, from Ecuador, nice people. And I said, all right, let me go in there and get a coffee. This coffee was really good, and it was strong. It wasn't better than the other people. It didn't really even compare, honestly. They still have to get used to working with that espresso machine. It was really strong, but I enjoyed it. Then I bump into my other brother, and he says, hey, take a ride with me. Next thing you know, I'm at the Jersey Shore. There's palm trees. I'm on a beach. I was in a restaurant that had a tiki bar. It was fantastic. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
With Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Our friends on The View were having a discussion today about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, presidential candidate, and they just can't get enough of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Let me tell you, the conversation is how he's anti-LGBTQ because he surrounds himself with, listen to this, internet trolls and right-wing extremists. You got to love this extremist label and term, the way it gets tossed around as if anything. Anyway, listen to this exchange.
I would just say your girl said it first. He's the most overhyped politician in Republican politics. So I've known Ron DeSantis since he was in the House. I think I wrote an op-ed for him like 5 years ago. He was a sane, serious, conservative Congress member. He wasn't someone I would say is anywhere near ready to be president. This is a quote when he was first elected in May 2018. I'm not going to be getting into these bathroom wars. I don't think it's a good use of our time. I want the LGBTQ community to be able to live their life, whether you're gay, whether you're religious. You should all be welcome.
What happened to him?
This used to be a sane, reasonable person. And listen, the buck stops 100% with DeSantis, but he's decided to surround himself by these basically internet trolls of right-wing extremists who literally are so far outside the mainstream, even of my party, that they have driven him a direction that he's in such a bad place. I don't think he could have a national future. He has been so off-putting to so many people. I'm a Republican. I could not vote for him because where he is on
LGBT. You see, I don't agree with the part of that they've driven him there. He's a grown-ass man, and he's the governor of a state. He knows what he's doing. He's making his decisions.
The part that I think they both fail to realize is that when things go amok, if you asked me 5 years ago and said, hey, what do you think about, I don't know, LGBTQ or whatever, I probably would have had a similar response saying, look, I'm probably, people can live their lives and do what they have to do. You know why? Because 5 years ago, Drag Queen Story Hour wasn't a huge thing. These people that are constantly going after children, wanting specifically to have drag queen shows where they bring their microphone and use it like a substitute for a sex toy. They use this on stage as a prop. That's just not appropriate for children. Period. The end. That shouldn't even be up for discussion. But today it's like, oh, well, as long as I'm dressed in drag, then it's okay for me to use a microphone and pretend it's a sex toy and be extremely provocative. No, it's not okay. Listen, that's just wrong. And the fact that they can't reconcile this on The View and realize that where we were and where we are now are two different places, right? It's a very serious thing for parents to have to face this. So, yeah, I'm sure DeSantis didn't want to get into the bathroom wars. Nobody really did. That's not something any politician aspires to do. You get into the fight when you have to. That's just literally how it goes. Anyway, let's go to Jeff. He's in Port St. Lucie, Florida on WPSL. Jeff, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hi. The funny thing is I wanted to talk about DeSantis. First, let me say that your show, other shows, I think based on opinions, everybody's got an opinion. Some people think Hunter Biden should go to jail. Other people think that Kushner should be, $2 billion from Saudi. Okay. But here's the facts that we deal with in Florida. The facts. The fact is that our Governor Ron DeSantis, was the driving force behind getting legislation passed that our schools are going to teach kids that slavery was a good thing.
Tell me more about this, because I don't know that to be accurate. How do you support that?
He pushed forward legislation.
What's the name of this legislation? What's the number of the bill?
I don't know about that. I'm sorry?
What's the number of the bill you're referencing?
Don't ask me that. I just know that it was passed this week.
What's the name of the bill?
The bill. Do you have a fax number? I can send you some of this stuff.
I have a phone number and a website, and I've got you on the phone with me.
Yeah. Ron DeSantis said slavery was a good thing because black people
Ron
learned
DeSantis
trade.
didn't say slavery was a good thing. Some leftist on a news network that you've probably watched said that Ron DeSantis said that, but he didn't say anything. What they have is a bill that is trying to protect history from being perverted by people that are activists. And these activists want to change the story. And they do that by saying that now Ron DeSantis is trying to erase black history from U.S. history and teach that slavery is good. And Kamala Harris went out there, Vice President Kamala Harris, she went out there and said the same exact thing. And they're parroting these things, and now you're saying it. But the fact that you can't mention the name of the bill, you don't know the bill number, and you've never heard him say it because it didn't happen, right? This is just like the Don't Say Gay bill. Here's another example of how they've misconstrued the truth, right? And in my opinion, they've just intentionally contorted the truth to make it fit their narrative. But the reality is, this Don't Say Gay bill, which is really called the Parental Rights and Education Act, that's the legal name of the bill, it doesn't contain the words don't say gay anywhere. It doesn't say gay anywhere. It uses the term LGBTQ, and it doesn't say you can't say it. It says that we're not going to teach kids about sexuality between kindergarten and third grade. So now you take a bill where the governor and the Department of Ed and parents seem to be in agreement that this is a good thing to not teach children about sexuality between kindergarten and third grade. And yet the media gives it a new name. They say something that isn't true, and they go ahead and try to make it look like something that it's not, saying it's called a Don't Say Gay bill, and they're trying to erase the LGBTQ community from Florida. But it's just simply not true. The LGBTQ Florida community in Florida is not necessarily in existence because they want to teach kindergarten through third graders about sexuality. There may be some of them that want that, but by and large, that's not their purpose. They just have a different lifestyle. And I think they're able to have that. This is America. But it becomes problematic when people start lying about DeSantis and trying to change the way things work. So thanks for the call, Jeff. I appreciate it. I think you're misinformed on this one, and I would recommend you take a little bit of time, go read the bill, check out the bill, listen to what Ron DeSantis said when he signed the bill, and I think you'll agree with me in the long run. Anyway, the rest of your calls and more are coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And again, just to reiterate, the expert team that we have in the control room sent me a couple of lines from the curriculum in Florida, the Florida Social Studies curriculum. We have an excerpt of it, and here's what it says. The teacher in the classroom, of course, the student, will examine the various duties and trades performed by slaves. Example given are agricultural work, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, and transportation. The benchmark clarifications, and the one in question here is the first clarification. Instruction includes how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. So this single point of clarification where they're saying that, and again, this is very true, there are a number of people that were slaves and became freed men, and they went up north with a skill set that was well beyond what they did just solely working on plantations. There were a bunch of men that had developed skills in those areas, and not just the agricultural work, but painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, transportation. And when they went up north as free men, they were able to do those things and make money and be competitive and say, I'll do it for less than the white guy. And they became enterprising and eventually made enough money to start buying things. They built so much of their own area, and this is how eventually Black Wall Street came about. Now, does that mean that slavery was good? Absolutely not. Hell no. Slavery was never good. This curriculum doesn't teach that slavery was good. One point of clarification explains how, when they were freed men, they were able to succeed. because of skills that they developed in their previous employment, even if it was indentured servitude or slavery. That's not I'm not making an argument pro-slavery. I would never do such a thing. Slavery was disgusting and it was evil. It was demonic. No human being should be treated that way. But we can't ignore the fact that there are some that left and knew how to learn to work. Some worked inside the home and were able to now go do domestic service in the North, Chicago and other areas. And that's just a fact. Anyway, let's continue with our calls. And let's go to Rob calling us from Mitchell, South Dakota on KORN. Rob, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hello, good evening.
Buenas noches.
The 70s gas crisis, I was wondering if I could take you back to the 70s for a second.
Sure, go for it.
In general, when I was a kid, I'm 55 years old. I was born in 1968. So I grew up on a farm, and I was around adult conversation all the time. And I remember the adults crying when gas got above 25 cents a gallon from the local mom-and-pop refinery. It was a small refinery right there in town, and it was operated by 3 people, the whole operation. So it's not a big, complex thing to refine fuel, first of all. You've probably seen the videos on YouTube where they refine it on the ground, and I don't advocate for that. But we have oil at 700 feet here, and it's recoverable for $20 a barrel. Now, if you look at like Athabascan oil sands or Alaskan oil, it's $200 before it gets through the pipeline, just in cost. And then the situation in Texas and Russia, they are out of business and they're broke if they can't sell for 45 to 50, just in general numbers. And then offshore,
I don't want to rush you, Rob, but you're losing us, so quickly get to the point.
Okay. The Republicans and the Democrats haven't allowed us to build refineries, but they sell them to the Islamic State.
Which Republicans are you talking about?
I'm talking about the entire House and Senate. My family is 7 generations that have been fighting against this, trying to get refineries built. So in order to engineer the fake 70s gas crisis, they shut down our local refineries.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I have no idea what you're talking about and wouldn't even know how to respond to that. As far as I know, Kristi Noem was doing a great job with pushing forward with all sorts of energy exploration in South Dakota, and it was roaring up until a Democrat took office. I don't remember hearing any complaints during the Trump administration, but you would know better than me. You're in South Dakota and I'm not. So we'll do some research on our end, and maybe we'll bring you back as a guest or have another guest on that topic of oil being blocked at 700 feet in South Dakota because of X, Y, and Z that you just mentioned. Thank you for your call, sir. Let us continue here with Linda calling us from Albany, New York. But first, a quick pause, and we'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Do we still have the caller that was on? All right. Well, let's go to Mac then. Mac in Ocean City, New Jersey, WOND. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Listen, I've been listening to you for a whole year, every night, 10 to 1 o'clock. I
Thank
just want to say, like, just listen to you tonight with your last couple callers, the way you just respected them. I mean, you're just like very nice, fair, balanced. and I love the way you conduct yourself with your listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do try, because I feel like we can't get anywhere if we can't have a discussion. And Lord knows, I don't want to get into a fist fight every single day over every single issue. And we can't live a life like that. So we have to have these discussions. But sometimes people are just a little bit off the deep end. You know what I mean, Mac?
You're correct. Everyone's got to settle down. It's America. It's the greatest country on this earth. Let's all get along. Be grateful for what you have in this country, especially God. I mean, you guys, let's get it together, man. That's all I got to say, Rich.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And let me let you know, big shout out to WOND. I was down in Seabright today. I had a great time at a restaurant I won't announce because, that would be a freebie for them. It was a great beachfront restaurant. Mac, thank you so much. I appreciate what you said. Linda, Albany, New York, we found you. WGDJ, go right ahead.
Thank you. A couple of things, Rich. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
First, talking about American made. When I was growing up, the understanding was you tried to buy American made, which then killed people and jobs who then would buy products perhaps that some of your relatives were involved in making. And secondly, one verse that I have found that was hopeful to me over the years that somebody else might find hopeful is the Bible saying that, yea, though I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
This is the
Rich.
23rd Psalm.
Sure.
And thank you, Linda. I
Yes.
appreciate that. Let me tell you, I for a little while, I volunteered as a police chaplain, and part of the duties of that were amongst like delivering death notifications and things like that you were trained to do was, officiating funerals for just people that were involved in homicides in the city of Newark, New Jersey. And I've had to read that more times than I'd like. And it's a wonderful verse, and it really does bring some comfort and peace. And ultimately, while things are contentious in the United States, I think ultimately we as a people, we do have to coalesce together. We have to come together, irrespective of the things that we believe, to coexist, right? And coexisting, many people are like, all right, you do you, I'll do me. I'm going to do what I do from over here. You're going to do what you do over there. But the reality is, and maybe it's my upbringing, being born in the late 70s and growing up early 80s in Brooklyn and then moving to Jersey. But many people just helped each other. Like we were just helpful to one another, whether it was, buying American, like you were saying, or just going to the local place because that was the local place and they were showing up to open up their shop and, hey, let me help them out. And the rise of the big box store and people doing better economically made things easier for people to go to the whatever mart and spend money over there. But ultimately, I think we always have to keep it focused on what we're doing at home. Buy American and start with going to your local whatever, right? Your local bar, your local barber, your local grocer. That's, I think, where it starts, and we have to respect each other while we're there. Anyway, I'm getting off my high horse. I'm getting off the soapbox. Until the next time, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless. I am Rich Valdez. What a pleasure it's been with you this week. I'm looking forward to coming back on Monday. See you then.